You've been told that eating late is bad for digestion, that breakfast is the most important meal, that seniors need lighter dinners to sleep better. All of that sounds reasonable, and most of it is partially true. But here's what almost no one is talking about. It's not just when your father eats at night that determines whether he wakes up inflamed, cognitively slower, or at higher risk for a cardiovascular event in the coming weeks. It's what specific foods trigger a metabolic cascade after 70 that doesn't happen the same way at 50. After age 70, the body's ability to clear glucose during sleep drops by nearly 40% compared to middle age, according to research published in Diabetes Care. The liver's glycogen storage becomes less efficient, insulin sensitivity craters after sunset, and certain foods that seem perfectly healthy during the day, become metabolic grenades when consumed within 4 hours of lying down. We're going to walk through 5 of them, and number 4 is sitting in your father's kitchen right now, recommended by his doctor, and it's quietly accelerating the exact condition it's supposed to prevent. But before we get there, let me be clear about something most videos won't tell you. Knowing which foods to avoid at night is just one piece of managing the full picture after 70. The real shift happens when you understand how to stabilize your father's blood sugar, inflammation markers, and sleep-wake hormones across the entire 24-hour cycle, not just at dinner. There's a protocol built for that, designed specifically for people over 70 managing glucose and cardiovascular risk. It breaks down meal timing strategies that align with circadian insulin patterns, the exact supplements that support overnight metabolic clearance, and daily routines that prevent the morning glucose spike most seniors don't even know they're having. The link is in the description below or pinned at the top of the comments. Let's start with what's actually happening inside your father's body after 70 when the sun goes down. Around age 70, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's master clock, starts losing cells. This isn't dramatic, it's gradual, but the consequence is profound. The body's circadian rhythm, which once coordinated insulin release, cortisol suppression, and digestive enzyme production with near-perfect timing, begins to drift. Studies from the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism show that older adults experience what's called circadian misalignment, where the pancreas is still releasing insulin as if it's mid-afternoon, even though it's 9 p.m. and the liver has already started its overnight fasting protocol. This creates a mismatch. Insulin is present, but the cells are resistant. Glucose sits in the bloodstream longer. And here's the part that makes tonight's dinner so critical. The longer glucose circulates after 70, the more it binds to proteins in the blood vessel walls, forming what are called advanced glycation end products. Ages. These aren't just markers, they're structural damage. They stiffen arteries, they increase clot risk, they accelerate cognitive decline. A 2019 study in Circulation Research found that older adults who consumed high glycemic meals after 7 p.m. had significantly higher levels of ages in their bloodstream the following morning compared to those who ate the same foods at lunch. The food didn't change, the timing did, and the body's ability to process it collapsed. So when we talk about foods to avoid at night after 70, we're not talking about comfort or digestion alone. We're talking about whether your father wakes up with stiffer arteries, higher clot risk, and a brain that's been marinating in glucose all night. Let's go through the 5 foods that make this worse. White rice, even the kind he's eaten his whole life. Most people think of white rice as neutral. It's bland, it's easy to digest. It's a staple in blue zones. So how bad could it be? But here's the problem. After 70, white rice consumed at night doesn't behave like it did at 50. Research from the Shrotsu American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that white rice has a glycemic index of 73, meaning it spikes blood sugar faster than table sugar in many individuals. During the day, when your father is moving, when his muscles are insulin sensitive, when his liver is actively processing glucose, that spike gets managed. But at night, after 70, his muscles are resting. His liver is preparing for an 8-hour fast. Insulin resistance is at its peak, so that bowl of white rice he had with dinner at 7:30, it's still spiking his glucose at 10 p.m., and because his pancreas is aging, it overcompensates, dumping more insulin than necessary, which triggers a blood sugar crash around 2 or 3 in the morning. In knee, that's why he wakes up. That's why he feels shaky. That's why he reaches for a snack at 4 a.m. and starts the whole cycle again. A study published in BMJ Open Diabetes Research and Care tracked older adults who consumed white rice at dinner versus lunch and found that nighttime consumption was associated with a 47% higher risk of experiencing nocturnal hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, during sleep, which is linked to increased fall risk, confusion, and next-day fatigue. If your father eats white rice at night and wakes up groggy, irritable, or disoriented, this is probably why. His brain spent the night on a glucose roller coaster, and he doesn't even know it. And this sets up the next problem, because the insulin surge from that rice doesn't just lower blood sugar, it also blocks fat burning for the next 6 to 8 hours. Any fruit marketed as heart-healthy, especially bananas and grapes, you've probably heard that fruit is nature's candy, and that's fine during the day. But after 70, eating fruit at night is one of the fastest ways to flood the bloodstream with fructose at exactly the wrong time. Fructose is metabolized almost exclusively by the liver, and at night the liver is supposed to be breaking down glycogen and producing ketones to fuel the brain during sleep. When your father eats a banana or a handful of grapes after dinner, his liver has to stop that process and deal with the fructose first. Research in hepatology found that older adults have significantly reduced fructose clearance rates compared to younger people, meaning the fructose sits in the liver longer, gets converted to fat, and contributes to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, even in people who aren't overweight. A single banana contains about 14 grams of sugar, most of it fructose. Grapes are worse, a cup contains 23 grams. And because fructose doesn't trigger the same insulin response as glucose, your father won't feel full. He'll feel like he had a light, healthy snack, and then he'll wonder why his fasting glucose is elevated the next morning. A 2020 study in Nutrients tracked seniors who consumed fruit at night versus earlier in the day, and found that nighttime fruit consumption was linked to higher triglyceride levels, increased liver fat, and worse, insulin sensitivity the following day. The researchers noted that the issue wasn't the fruit itself, it was the timing. The liver simply couldn't process it efficiently after sunset. If your father is eating fruit after dinner because he thinks it's better than dessert, he's partially right. But the metabolic cost is still there, and it's showing up in his blood wash the next morning. Which brings us to something even more common, something sitting in nearly every senior's pantry right now. Whole grain bread, yes, even the sprouted kind. This one surprises people because whole grain bread is supposed to be the healthy choice. It's high in fiber, it's recommended for heart health. Doctors tell seniors to choose it over white bread, and that advice is solid during the day. But at night, after 70, whole grain bread becomes a problem, for a reason most people don't expect. It's not just about the carbs, it's about the lectins, the phytic acid, and the way aging digestion handles dense plant fibers after dark. Research published in Goot found that older adults experience what's called delayed gastric emptying at night, meaning food sits in the stomach significantly longer when consumed after 6 p.m. Whole grain bread, because of its fibre density, can sit in the stomach for up to 4 hours, fermenting, producing gas, and triggering low-grade inflammation in the gut lining. That inflammation doesn't stay in the gut. It signals the liver to release inflammatory cytokines, which then circulate through the bloodstream and reach the brain. A study in brain behavior and immunity found that seniors who consumed high-fiber grain products at night had measurably higher levels of interleukin-6, a key inflammatory marker, the following morning compared to those who ate the same foods at lunch. And here's the part that makes this worse. The phytic acid in whole grains binds to minerals like magnesium, calcium, and zinc, pulling them out of circulation exactly when your father's body needs them for overnight muscle repair, bone maintenance, and immune function. If he's eating whole grain toast as a bedtime snack because it feels healthy and filling, he's actually creating a state of low-grade nutrient depletion that his 70-year-old body can't compensate for the way it could at 40. His sleep suffers, his inflammation rises, his fasting glucose climbs, and he has no idea the bread is involved. Most people blame aging, but the timing is the variable that changed. Low-fat yogurt with fruit, the one his doctor probably recommended. This is the food that gets recommended constantly, especially to seniors managing cholesterol or weight. It's protein, it's probiotics, it's calcium, it feels like the perfect nighttime snack. But after 70, low-fat yogurt with fruit is one of the worst things your father can eat before bed, and the reason is hiding in plain sight. It's the sugar. Most low-fat yogurts contain between 12 and 20 grams of added sugar per serving, and when you add fruit you're looking at 30 grams or more, equivalent to 7 teaspoons of sugar. Research from Mahindra, the Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology, found that older adults who consumed high-sugar dairy products at night experienced significantly higher overnight glucose variability, meaning their blood sugar spiked and crashed repeatedly during sleep. This isn't just uncomfortable, it's destructive. Each spike triggers an insulin response. Each crash triggers a cortisol release to bring glucose back up. By morning, your father's body has been in metabolic chaos for 8 hours, and he wakes up exhausted, inflamed, and insulin-resistant. A 2021 study published in Age and Aging tracked seniors who ate low-fat sweetened yogurt at night versus plain full-fat yogurt and found that the low-fat group had worse sleep quality, higher morning glucose, and significantly elevated markers of systemic inflammation. The researchers concluded that the combination of sugar and the absence of fat, which would normally slow glucose absorption, created a perfect storm for metabolic dysfunction in older adults. If your father is eating low-fat yogurt at night because it was recommended for bone health or gut health, those benefits are being erased by the sugar load and the timing. The probiotics help, the calcium helps, but the sugar and the circadian mismatch override both. And this leads directly to the fifth food, which is possibly the most common and the most overlooked. Any processed meat, even the deli turkey he thinks is lean. Processed meats like deli turkey, ham, salami, and even chicken sausage seem like smart protein choices at night. They're easy, they're filling, they don't spike blood sugar. But after 70, eating processed meat at night does something far worse than raising glucose. It floods the bloodstream with sodium, nitrates, and advanced glycation end products, right when the kidneys and cardiovascular system are trying to rest. Research in Hypertension Heart found that older adults who consumed processed meats in the evening experienced significant overnight blood pressure elevation, sometimes as high as 15 points systolic, compared to those who ate the same meats at lunch. This happens because the kidneys, after 70, lose about 30% of their filtration capacity. When your father eats salty preserved meat at night, his kidneys can't clear the sodium efficiently, so it stays in the bloodstream, pulling water with it, increasing blood volume and raising blood pressure for hours. A study published in JAMA Internal Medicine tracked nearly 5,000 older adults and found that those who regularly consumed processed meats at dinner had a 62% higher risk of experiencing a cardiovascular event within the next 5 years, compared to those who avoided them after 4 p.m. The nitrates in processed meats convert to nitrosamines in the stomach, especially in the presence of stomach acid, which increases overnight. These compounds are linked to endothelial dysfunction, damage to the lining of blood vessels, which is the first step toward atherosclerosis, clot formation, and stroke. If your father is eating deli turkey on whole grain bread as a healthy nighttime snack, he's combining 2 of the foods on this list, and the cumulative effect is worse than either one alone. His blood pressure climbs, his kidneys struggle, his arteries stiffen, and by morning his body has aged more in 8 hours than it should have in a week. So what should your father eat at night instead? The goal isn't to avoid eating, it's to eat in a way that supports overnight repair, stable glucose, and low inflammation. The best nighttime foods after 70 are high in fat and moderate in protein, with almost no carbohydrates. Think a small portion of wild-caught salmon with steamed broccoli and olive oil, a handful of almonds or walnuts, a boiled egg with avocado. These foods don't spike insulin. They provide the amino acids needed for muscle repair during sleep. They deliver omega-3s that reduce inflammation, and they keep blood sugar stable for the entire night. Research from Cell Metabolism found that older adults who consumed high-fat, low-carb meals after 6 p.m. had significantly better sleep quality, lower morning glucose, and improved cognitive performance the next day compared to those who ate carb-heavy dinners. The key is timing and composition. If your father is hungry at night, he should eat, but what he eats determines whether he wakes up healthier or more inflamed. Let's recap what we've covered. First, white rice at night spikes glucose and triggers insulin, surges that lead to nocturnal hypoglycemia and next-day fatigue. Second, fruit after 70 overloads the liver with fructose it can't process efficiently, leading to fat accumulation and worse insulin sensitivity. Third, whole grain bread sits in the stomach for hours, triggers inflammation, and strips the body of critical minerals overnight. Fourth, low-fat yogurt with fruit floods the bloodstream with sugar at exactly the wrong time, creating glucose variability and cortisol spikes during sleep. Fifth, processed meats raise blood pressure, damage blood vessels, and increase cardiovascular risk when eaten after sunset. These aren't foods to avoid forever. They're foods to avoid at night, after 70, when the body's ability to process them collapses. If your father is eating any of these after dinner, you now understand why he's waking up tired, why his glucose is creeping up, and why his doctor keeps adjusting his medications without asking about meal timing. The solution isn't more drugs, it's smarter timing. Now that you know which foods are working against him after dark, the next step is understanding how to build a full system that stabilizes his metabolism around the clock, not just at dinner. There's a complete protocol designed for exactly this, managing glucose, inflammation, and cardiovascular risk in people over 70. It walks through the meal timing strategies that align with his circadian rhythms, the specific supplements that support overnight glucose clearance and protect against arterial stiffness, and the daily routines that make all of this sustainable long-term, not just for a week or a month. The link is in the description below or pinned at the top of the comments. Your father's body is still capable of incredible repair, but only if you stop asking it to process the wrong foods at the wrong time.